Welcome to Executive Leaders Radio, your spot in the corner office, the radio show where executives share their secrets to success. Executive Leaders Radio.
You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio, broadcast from the offices of Cressa, your commercial real estate advisors. This is your host, John Schuhart, an executive coach from Graybeard Coaching. My co-hosts today are Haley Morris from Cressa, Chris Yoko from the Yoko Company, Andrea Dykes from Howard Insurance, Joe Meadows from Bean, Kinney & Corman, Alex Fleming from YHB CPA, and Jim Morgan from People Stretch Solutions. We have a great lineup of guests for you today on our show, including Molly Phonpadith, CEO and co-founder of SOAR Community Networks. Our second guest is Sam Rihani, COO and partner of Options for Senior America. Our third guest is Seth Moore, the CEO of T-Rex Solutions. And our fourth guest is Vuong, co-founder and president of WhyHotels. It is now my pleasure to introduce you to Molly Phonpadith. Molly, what is SOAR Community Networks?
SOAR Community Network is a consortium of experts who support organizations, growing organizations with leadership development, empowering them to become sustainable so they can create greater social impact.
And how large or how small is SOAR Community Networks?
It is a family-run business, husband and wife team, and our consortium includes up to 30 experts that support us on projects.
How did you get involved?
How did I get involved?
Yeah.
I'm the founder and CEO. I was inspired to lead people, to put people first, and to care about community.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. How or where did you grow up?
I grew up in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, coming from Laos, war-torn Laos, when I was a child. So I'm a child refugee of war. So
what was it like being a refugee?
It was tough. It was scary. It was quite challenging to grow up in a land where really you weren't accepted, and at the same time you struggled with your identity because you were taught to be one way at home, and then when you went to school you were expected to show up a different way. So it was a lot of identity crisis, I would say, as a child.
How many siblings did you have?
I have 3 siblings. There are a total of 4 of us.
And what was your number in the birth order there?
I'm the second child.
And what was your role in the family or among the siblings?
The responsible one, the go-to, the bill writer, the letter reader, the errand runner.
How did you inherit that role?
I just naturally, I was the go-to. I think my personality is very much about go get it done, whatever it takes. And my parents knew that I would not say no. I would just get it done because I understood the importance of the mission of doing what we needed to do to move from poverty one day.
So what kind of living conditions did you have when you first arrived in the United States?
We were sponsored by a local church here in the D.C. area, and we were placed in Washington, D.C., Southeast, murder capital of the world at the time, by the way. And we were in a small apartment, 3 different families, each in their own rooms in that apartment.
Okay. Chris?
So, I mean, with your parents coming over while you were so young, 4 kids, a lot going on, what did you learn from or model after your parents in terms of persistence and what's helped you, develop and grow SOAR?
They were very creative. We would find ourselves figuring out how to eat, because my dad became a janitor and my mom was first a dishwasher and then a hotel housekeeper. So I would watch them and they would go and find ways to make money. They worked 7 days a week. When my dad wasn't working, he would go to the church members in his broken English and draw pictures and ask if he could paint their fences or, do any type of gardening, just because he knew that that was what needed to happen to make more money.
And what did you, out of seeing that kind of that hustle and that work, what was the payment that you saw come out, or what was the reward you saw that you then modeled after?
Anything's possible. Like you set a goal and, you do what it takes. You get creative. You ask for help. My dad, I remember, he showed up at a church member's home who was a real estate agent, and she kept saying, no, that's not the way it works here. You can't just buy a house. You can't just buy a house. You have to have a down payment. You have to do this. And he was trying to explain to her, but again, limited English. So he just showed up at her house and he told her, buy home. opened up the suitcase and it had $20,000 in there with his janitor salary, and we were able to buy a home in 7 years, coming from nothing.
Andrea?
What activities did you participate in when you were younger? Did you play sports? What did you like to do for fun?
We really didn't have any means to play sports, but we got great lessons on fishing and gardening and all the ways that really we could feed ourselves. So I spent a lot of time doing that, and I call parenting a sport too. I was parenting my parents. I was teaching them English. Whatever we learned at school, we came home and we taught our parents.
What does fishing and gardening have to do with running your business today?
Oh my gosh, patience. Watching people nurture, watching sometimes crops fail and then having to reseed and rewater. Fishing is a practice of patience, knowing that you can't take it all home. You have to be able to throw things back in and allow them to grow. A lot of different lovely lessons, but most importantly that you can find a way to eat so long as you have a drive and a passion to move forward in life.
And you mentioned earlier in the interview that you were paying the family's bills. Was that something that mom and dad assigned to you? Why were you doing that work?
I remember my father and my mother, they were just so stressed out all the time, and they just didn't want to wait sometimes till 2 or 3 weeks because we would get notices to wait for a church member to come help and translate the document. So I learned, well, my siblings as well, but by the time I was able to read and write, I just said, I'll do it. Like, I don't know if we're going to miss a payment or get in trouble, so I'll just do it. And I think I started doing bills when I was about 7.5.
Haley?
Many people wouldn't come out of your situation as optimistic and successful as you are. What experiences internally and externally can you attribute your success and your calm aura that clearly shows off of the way you speak and carry yourself?
I'll give credit first and foremost to my grandmother. She was home with us when my parents were working 3, sometimes 4 jobs. And she just taught us the basic principle of calmness, and she would teach us meditation. And my grandmother had gone through multiple wars that Laos had experienced through her lifetime. So she knew what it meant to basically go underground and duck from bombs, but she also knew what it meant to talk to the birds and, believe that everything has a purpose and a place. So I learned a lot of that from her, and then a lot of people in my life, my mentors that came along the way that saw something special in me, and they helped me realize that even though your situation is not so pretty, you are not your situation.
So you mentioned in the green room one of your mentors. Tell us about Ms. Cartwright.
Miss Cartwright was my 9th grade teacher, and she gave me the greatest gift, the gift of my own gifts as a poet. She told me after a writing assignment, that what I presented to her was not a journal entry, but it was prose. And I had no idea at the time what prose was. So I knew that gift had come with me. So she was instrumental in allowing me to see my natural gifts as a writer. And so I've written 4 books now, and I have been able to accomplish some big things with my writing, international best-selling being one of them.
You mentioned earlier that it was tough being one way at home and then another way outside, but it sounds like she tapped into helping you be who you really were. How do you help do that with the people that you coach and mentor?
Oh, this is so good. When we're talking about Mrs. Cartwright, she saw the gifts in me that I didn't see in myself. And a lot of the work that we do now is with leadership development is going to the personal side of who you are, talking about your soul, talking about the gifts that no one else has but you, and uncovering that. And once people can feel empowered about their own gifts, they can lead better.
Joe?
Separate and apart from Miss Cartwright or anybody else, on your own, you were one of 4 children. You were the second to oldest, so you weren't the oldest. How was it, as being second to oldest, that you were the calming force, that you were the parenting kid of the other children, and that they looked up to you as being somebody to listen to?
I think both of my sister and I, my older sister and I, are very loving people. But my older sister is a little bit more introverted, and she's also a little bit more structured, where I'm a little bit more free-spirited, I'm diplomatic. So I kind of let things flow, and my parents sense that, and my siblings sense that. And there's a trust in that. You know, they can be who they are. They can say what they want. They can cry. They can get mad. And I'm kind of like, okay, you know, just accept them as they are. And I think that's really just a natural thing that I have.
Molly, what's your website address?
SOARcommunitynetwork.com. That's SOAR.
We've been speaking with Molly Phonpadith. Don't forget to visit our website, executiveleadersradio.com, to learn more about our executive leaders. We'll be back in a moment. We're talking with Lisa Curtin from Caldwell CPA. What is Caldwell CPA, Lisa?
We're a certified public accounting firm located in Bethesda, Maryland.
And what makes it special?
We have a holistic approach to tax planning with our clients. We not only prepare tax returns and help them meet their financial goals, we take a look at the whole picture of what they do and who they are and put together a plan to help them meet their goals.
And what special things do you bring to Caldwell CPA?
I love people, so I really enjoy working with our team, developing our team, helping our team understand that there's a human being on the other side of the phone or the other side of the table, and at the same time being able to have connections with those the clients myself by just understanding more about their business and who they are.
And Lisa, what's your website?
CaldwellCPAs.com. That's CaldwellCPAS.com.
We've been talking to Lisa Curtin from Caldwell CPA. We're back, and you're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, John Schuhart from Graybeard Coaching, with my co-host, Haley Morris from Cressa, Chris Yoko from the Yoko Company, Andrea Dykes from Howard Insurance, Joe Meadows from Bean, Kinney & Corman, Alex Fleming from YHB CPA, and Jim Morgan from People Stretch Solutions. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to Sam Rihani. Sam, what is Option Corp for Senior America?
We are an organization that provides home care services for the elderly in their own homes.
And how big or how small is Option Corp for Senior America?
We currently have 17 offices, most of which are on the East Coast. And we have about 40 employees, office employees, and about 700 who work for us in the field.
How did you get involved in Option Corp for Senior
I was one
America?
of the co-founders, actually.
Okay. So where did you grow up, Sam?
I grew up in Beirut, Lebanon.
Okay. How did you get to the United States?
Actually, there was a foreign exchange program called American Field Service that I was fortunate enough to be selected to come to the United States for 1 year, and that was my first introduction to America.
Andrew?
Tell us.
Sorry. Go ahead. Excuse me.
Andrew, sorry.
Andrew.
Alex. When you were a foreign exchange student, what are your interests as a student over here? What brought you to the United States and was interesting to you in the United States?
One of the things that I think I was encouraged to even consider coming to the United States is my father is an American citizen. He is actually of Lebanese descent, but he was born in New York, lived in New York for a good part of his early life, about 30 years. So he encouraged me to consider that option. But when I came to the United States on this program, I was assigned to a family in Oregon, in the state of Oregon, and one of the things that really impressed me about that city were the bridges, which impacted me down the road in my adult life. I became an engineer as a result of that.
Were you building things as a kid?
Actually, I was. Yes. I was probably about 7-8 years old when I started doing this. I was building from scratch kites and some small vehicles that were made out of wire.
Andrea?
So you just told us about your father. Tell us a little bit about Mom.
Mother was a very influential person on our character, myself and my siblings. She was very ethical in her approach to life in general. She really cared about every single person that she knew, whether it was a family member, a friend, or a stranger that she just met for the first time. So that in itself was a very positive impact that we all had from her.
How do you take that to Options Corporation today?
I think the fact that we are in an industry where loved ones are being cared for in their own homes has a lot to do with compassion. So we bring that to the table day in and day out. We train our employees in that respect because it's very important for us to really sit in the shoes of the other person when they're considering home care services for their loved one, and that's exactly what we do.
And Mom played a special role in Options Corporation as well. You were sharing in the green room. Tell us a little bit more about that.
That's very true, very indirectly, but very impactful way. She had a medical issue. She was about 56 years old, and she had a tumor in her brain that was operated on. And as a result of that, she became paralyzed, immobile, basically, and speechless. And we had to care for her. So we brought her over to the United States, and we were trying to find someone who would provide care for her on a 24-hour basis. It was a challenge for us. Ultimately, we got someone. But my brother and I, my middle brother, the one in the middle, not my oldest, but the one younger than him, and I decided that this may be something that we need to look into in terms of potentially starting a business that provides that service. And that's exactly how Options started.
Joe?
We were talking in the green room. You have a home healthcare business now. Prior to that, you owned and operated your own engineering firm. Your children are running their own sports stores. Your father ran a printing press of his own business. Where did you get this entrepreneurial spirit from?
I think you just mentioned a lot of the sources. A lot of that is kind of indirect in a way, but at the same time, it kind of you live with it and becomes the norm. To be able to start your own business and do something good for society, that was really the major umbrella of that desire to really be an entrepreneur. And I think that's what really drove that outcome in myself and my children. Of course, it started with my father, as you mentioned.
Chris?
So you mentioned you're working with your brother at Options for America, Senior America, and obviously, you learn a lot of the dynamic of how you work with your siblings growing up, and I imagine you guys don't fight over a ball or a toy or anything anymore, but how did that dynamic when you were younger shape your working relationship now?
Very interestingly, when we were kids, there's about the difference of 5 years between myself and the brother that I'm a partner with right now. We used to fight quite a bit, actually. I mean, physically fight quite a bit. Today, obviously, we work very nicely together, although we do have our differences, our different opinions at times. And we take that as being really a very positive thing, because a lot of the times what we end up doing is sharing those different views and ending up with a resolution that is better than each one of our original thoughts. And this has worked very nicely for us. Yes, we do get along, and yes, we do have disagreements, but it's working out very nicely.
You mentioned that you took the caring from your mother. What characteristics did you bring from your father?
My father was very disciplined in his approach. He was very meticulous, and he really was a perfectionist. He wanted everything to be done as best as possible. And I think that's the part of me that is the engineer. I think I picked that from my father, even though he was not an engineer, but he was very meticulous in his work.
Were your parents able to see what you've built as far as a company from your mother's inspiration?
Unfortunately not, except at the early stages of Options for Senior America. We've been around for 30 years, so she did see part of that, but not at the time as we grew to...
What would they think of what you'd become?
What were they thinking?
What would they think of?
I'm sure they'd be very happy. They would not be surprised, but very happy.
Being the youngest of four, has that translated into you being more flexible when you're dealing with your brother or building a business because you are the youngest of four?
It's actually a series of feelings that you have when you are the youngest of four. And I think many of them are good, positive ones, and some of them may at times be not as good in terms of feelings. So at times you feel that perhaps you're neglected. That's not unusual. But at the same time, you feel that you're learning a lot from the siblings because they're the older ones. And my oldest brother is actually 12 years older than me. So at times I used to look up to him as potentially being my father, even though I knew he was not. My dad was always in the picture. But there was a lot of learning from my siblings.
The theme of family keeps coming up. How does that translate today in what you're doing at Option Corp for Senior America?
I think we look at options for Senior America as a company that is not necessarily only out there to make a profit. Of course, that's one of our goals, but more importantly, to really be able to contribute to families who are looking for home care services to their loved ones, because we've lived that ourselves. And I think that in itself has made an impact. We get a lot of reviews right now, and the reviews are really related to how compassionate we were. And I'm not talking about myself and my brother. I'm talking about the entire organization. Employees in our company get such reviews because they're trained to be that way. So there was definitely a direct impact from the family-oriented atmosphere that we lived in and what we're doing today at Options.
So how are you paying that forward?
I'm sorry?
How are you paying that forward?
Basically, we want to continue to do this and face the challenges that we know will be coming our ways from the different aspects, of the business. The whole purpose of wanting to do the right thing in this industry is because we feel that it is a service that is needed. It is a very common service right now currently provided in the United States. It's very popular. It's one of the growest industries in the United States.
What's your website, Sam?
It's optionscorp.com.
We've been speaking with Sam Rihani. Don't forget to visit our website, executiveleadersradio.com, to learn more about our executive leaders. We'll be back in a moment. We're back, and you're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, John Schuhart from Graybeard Coaching, with my co-host, Haley Morris from Cressa, Chris Yoko from the Yoko Company, Andrea Dykes from Howard Insurance, Joe Meadows from Bean, Kinney & Corman, Alex Fleming from YHB CPA, and Jim Morgan from People Stretch Solutions. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Seth Moore. Seth, what is T-Rex Solutions?
We are a systems integrator for the federal government, specializing in cloud adoption and infrastructure optimization at the enterprise level, along with cybersecurity and data analytics.
How large or how small is T-Rex Solutions?
In terms of revenue, we're about $400 million per year.
And how did you get involved?
I started my career with Lockheed Martin in the federal government space, and after about a 20-year career there, I was approached to come to T-Rex as the CFO, and that was a great opportunity to further my career, and that's how I started there.
And how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have one brother and one sister. My brother's 2 years younger than I am, and my sister is 4 years younger than I am.
Okay, and tell us a little bit about your parents.
My parents are teachers. Both of them were teachers. My dad taught ninth grade English, and my mom taught physical education and health.
How did both your parents, being teachers, their skills lead you to run a company, a large technology company?
I think my father taught me to think of others first. He's a very selfless person, and that's one of the important things I learned from him. And my mom taught me about accountability, about holding myself accountable to others, but also how to hold others accountable to their commitments, and to do that in a very respectful and compassionate way.
And also, how you mentioned in the green room that you're very much an introvert, and it's very impressive being an introvert to be a CEO of a $400 million company. What are challenges, and how have you overcome them?
It's difficult. I have to work hard to put myself in situations where I have to be in a group setting or be talking in front of people. And I learned early on in my career that those uncomfortable situations are the ones where you grow the most or learn the most. So now I just try to take advantage of those opportunities, and when there's something that's presented to me that's uncomfortable, I dive in and try to learn from it.
Andrea?
You mentioned some pretty big lessons that your parents just taught you, and can you think of any examples early in life that carry through to your work today or your role as a CEO today?
Yeah, well, growing up, I played sports, and I played team sports. And I grew up in a small town, and I was fortunate in doing that I was a little bit above average from an athletic perspective, and was able to play positions that are naturally leadership roles. On the football team, I was a quarterback. On the baseball team, I was a shortstop. And those gave me opportunities to get out of my shell and kind of forced me into positions of leadership. And I learned a lot from those roles as a child that I've converted into my leadership approach as an adult.
And you mentioned in the green room that you went to school where your father taught. What was that like for you?
Yeah, that was an interesting experience. My father knew when I did something wrong before I did. He knew what my grades were before I knew what my grades were, which was difficult, and it was also challenging in some respects in that some of my peers and friends liked my father as a teacher, and some of them didn't like my father as a teacher. So that created some friction with my peers, and I had to learn how to deal with that in a positive, productive way.
You mentioned that you were playing sports and that you were a quarterback. Were you any good?
Well, I wasn't as good as I would have liked to have been. Interestingly enough, I was offered scholarships to go to what at the time was called 1AA schools, and I wanted to go to Virginia Tech. That's where I wanted to go to school. And if I was going to play, I wanted to play there. And they didn't offer me a scholarship, so I took an opportunity to go to military school after high school, in the hopes that I would impress Virginia Tech enough that they would want me to come play there. That was an interesting experience because I was there because I wanted to get better at football, and most of the other teammates that I played with were there because they didn't have high enough SAT scores or they didn't have high enough grades to get accepted into the universities, but they already had Division I scholarships. So they were much better athletes than I was, and they were clearly going places. And I was fortunate in that after the first 2 weeks in camp, they voted me to be the captain of the team, which was a huge surprise. And I think part of that was I played a position that was a leadership position, playing quarterback, but it was really helpful from a confidence perspective because I wasn't sure I was good enough to be there, and for them to vote me to be their captain really gave me confidence and helped springboard me into successful leadership later in life.
And you mentioned that that's a lesson that you bring into the work today as well. That you don't have to be the top person in there, but you surround yourself with other people.
Yeah, one of the things that I believe in strongly is that you have to surround yourself with people who are better than you. So my executive staff are all much better at what they do than I am, and they're people who probably would be more successful in my role than I am, and that's why I surround myself with those caliber people, and that's what's going to drive the organization to success.
So what does being the captain of a football team, how does that translate to being a CEO of a good-sized company?
Well, I think there's a number of elements there. One is organization and how you put the right people in the right place. Another is dealing with interpersonal relationships and the different personalities that come in an organization and how you make those folks come together as a team and work together. But it all boils down to how you treat people, and that's extremely important to me and extremely important to us at T-Rex that we treat one another the right way, and I think that's going to result in the best outcome.
So, Seth, with development of leaderships within T-Rex, it sounds like a lot of your journey was being put in a position where you got a chance to demonstrate intrinsic capability that made you a good leader. What do you look for in terms of opportunities to develop leaders at T-Rex?
I think the first thing is you have to be really capable at whatever your specific area of expertise is, and that's critical. But you also have to demonstrate that it's more important to treat others the right way than it is to win, quote unquote. So we look for the people who can fit in with the team the best. We look at different personality types. We do things like Myers-Briggs and DISC training to understand how people think and how they work, so that we plug the right people into the right roles to maximize success.
Seth, what was your first job?
My first job was in my uncle's vinegar factory, so we bottled vinegar.
How did that translate into your job, into your role today? What did you learn from that job?
Well, I think one of the important learning lessons from that role is that everybody's got a role on a team. In the vinegar factory, it was almost like an assembly line, and everybody had a very specific role that they played. And if everybody wasn't operating effectively, then it wasn't an efficient operation.
You've talked about your leadership skills being developed in the sports arena when you were younger, but I think you were mentioning in the green room there was also an aspect of protecting your siblings. And how did that also contribute to being a CEO and executive leader today?
Yeah, so being the oldest of my siblings, I felt a responsibility to look after them. And I really wanted them to have the opportunity to learn from my experiences, whether, I made a poor decision or something that happened to me in life. I didn't want them to have to live through the same thing. And, how that translates to my current role is, I do try to look out for folks on the team, but I also try to give them the resources and the tools so that they can be successful, and then let them hopefully to leverage from experiences that I have so that we don't make the same mistakes more than once. What were you protecting your siblings from? Well, there were a number of things. Biggest probably of which was bullying. I had some experiences early in life where I was bullied a little bit, and I didn't want to see my siblings go through the same thing. So I was trying to look after them from that standpoint. Mm-hmm. You mentioned you're an introvert. That's come up a couple of times. How does an introvert be a dad when he comes home after a long day of meetings and phone calls and talking to people and whatnot? I think the great thing about being a father and the great thing about kids is that they don't know what I do when I'm not at home. And they've got no expectation of me to do anything along those lines. So, at home, I'm dad, and I get to get away from what I do at work, and it's a great release, and it's a great opportunity to spend time with my family. How old are those boys? They're 8 and 5. And what do they think about the name of your company, T-Rex Solutions? Yeah, both of my kids are big dinosaur fans, and we're very excited to hear that I work for a company called T-Rex. So I bring home all the little memorabilia that are dinosaurs for them to play with. Okay. What's your website address for T-Rex Solutions? The website is TrexSolutionsLLC.com. There's no hyphens, no dashes. TrexSolutionsLLC.com. I'm sorry, give me that one more time. TrexSolutionsLLC.com. We've been speaking with Seth Moore, CEO of T-Rex Solutions. Don't forget to visit our website, executiveleadersradio.com, to learn more about our executive leaders. We'll be back in a moment.
Want help building your business with help from this show's CEOs? Our CEOs can help you uncover more opportunities, grow your sales, connect you, help you raise money, all the big issues, because our CEOs have been there and done that. They've succeeded in creating millions of jobs and earning millions of dollars, and some are available to advise you. Now, email mentors@executiveleadersradio.com. That's mentors@executiveleadersradio.com. The same CEOs you've heard on the show for 10 years may be willing to help you build your business, uncover new opportunities, grow your sales, connect you, help you raise money, all the big issues, because our CEOs have been there and done that, succeeding in creating millions of jobs and earning millions of dollars. And some are available to advise you. Now, email mentors@executiveleadersradio.com. That's mentors@executiveleadersradio.com.
Back, and you're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Bao Vuong. Bao, what is WhyHotel?
WhyHotel is a pop-up hotel operator. We partner with multifamily developers who build large institutional quality assets, and it takes anywhere from 9 to 12 to 18 months to fill these buildings with long-term renters. So we come in, we take 100 or so units, fully furnish them, and run a 24/7 operated hotel out of them.
Cool. How large or how small is WhyHotel?
WhyHotel has about 72 employees with about 200 keys right now.
And how did you get involved?
I was invited by my co-founder to join, Jason Fuden.
Okay.
How did he invite you, and what were you doing at the time?
Yeah, so I was working for a large real estate developer based here in D.C. at the time, and Jason at one time was my employee at P.N. Hoffman, a day short of a year. Really hard to keep great employees, so his previous company lured him back. And so Jason came up with the idea as a part of that company. I remember the day that he came up with it. He was down in Miami on a boys trip and called me and said, I have this brilliant idea for more efficient use of assets, and kind of walked me through it.
Was that a risky move for you, and were you a risky person when you were a kid?
Yeah. It was absolutely a risky move for me. I think that, as a young child, I was very much more, I guess, risk tolerant, and as time grew on, I became less risk tolerant. Worked for mostly large companies at the time, and focused and looked for large brands to work for. And so this, to me, leaving what was a really stable job that had a lot of growth potential to start something new, was a very difficult decision.
So you certainly endured some risk earlier in your life. Where were you born?
I was born in Vietnam.
And where did you grow up?
I grew up in Richmond, Virginia. Luckily, at the time when I was born, living in Vietnam, my mom had an opportunity to enroll us into a lottery to come over here to the United States. It was through church, and there was definitely some risk associated with putting our name in the lottery at the time. The government wasn't too favorable or too happy with families who were doing that. But my mom took the risk, put us in, and luckily we won the lottery.
So what was the biggest impact on you as a kid?
I think that you have to be a risk taker at times, and so I really think of myself as a calculated risk taker, and so I think I would never had the opportunity to grow up here in the U.S. and to really have the opportunity to start my own business without that initial risk taking from my mom.
Andrea?
So tell us a little bit more about Mom and Dad. When they came to the United States, what did they do for work? So my mom was a factory worker. She worked for AT&T, and my dad was a janitor and also worked in a warehouse, a forklift driver. And you mentioned that Mom sort of was entrepreneurial in spirit and took on a lot of hard work. She wasn't home a lot. How did that affect you growing up?
Yeah, so my mom worked really long hours and worked in the evening, worked on the weekends a lot. But one of the things that I always noticed was that she was always trying to improve herself mentally, improve her situation, improve our situation. So my mom purchased and started a frame shop. She was also an owner in a Chinese restaurant for a time. She also got her barber's license.
And how does that hard work ethic and everything that you've just described translate to the work you do today?
I think it's all about perseverance, and especially when you're a startup, you have limited resources. You have to be scrappy, and you have to constantly pivot. And I think that's one of the things that we try to do at WhyHotel is that we try to be efficient uses with our resources, and really, our whole business model is based upon that premise: is efficiency.
Jim?
Tell us about the first time you started making money.
Yeah, I worked as a camp counselor. For many years, I had volunteered as a counselor in training at a YMCA camp, and finally at 16, I was old enough to actually get paid for what I really enjoyed doing.
What made you different than all the other counselors?
I think one of the things is that I was really passionate about what I was doing, and with that, I brought a lot of energy and enthusiasm and love for what I was doing. And I think in many ways, it helped me to become the leader I am today, because I think that, kids at that age, they find people that are excited and happy and love what they do. And so I really thought of myself as a little bit of a mini leader to them.
So you bring that passion to the startup as well today?
Absolutely. I think that's one of reasons why we have such a great team that we do today, is because
we're passionate about what we do. And I think that passion exudes and goes down through the entire organization. It's not because of what we pay them. I think they really believe in what we do.
What was one of the first times you were an entrepreneur, though?
I started with my brother and a good friend. We had limited resources growing up. I remember my brother and I had the same white British Knight shoes. We had them for a really long time. They were super dirty. So we mixed together 409 and a couple other cleaning solutions to clean our shoes. It made our shoes bright white again, and we were like, this is brilliant of a product, and so we should go door to door selling it.
And how did that company do?
Unfortunately, we did not do enough business planning, and it cost us more to make the product than we could sell it for. So quickly closed up shop after that.
So what does that bring today? How did you bring that forward in today in your business and startup?
Yeah, I think that passion is good, but then and excitement is good, but you also have to balance that with business planning and good modeling and good projections into the future. And so that's what we try to do.
With you guys coming over from Vietnam at such an early age, what influence did you get from each parent as they adapted to the U.S., and how does that play into what you guys do at WhyHotel?
Yeah, I think from my dad, he was always caring about people, and he was always a happy person, and he was pretty even keeled, and so I think that's one of the things that I didn't appreciate for startup folks is that how up and down the business is. And so within a matter of a few hours, you're on a high and you're on a really low. And so I think bringing that even keenness and also that positive attitude every day to the team helps to kind of keep I guess a level group. For my mom, it's really that do whatever it takes attitude, right? It's breaking down any barrier that's in your way to ultimately be successful. And so that helps to push us forward as a team, and hopefully our team feels that also.
And you've mentioned that you're fun-loving and you seem it, and I'm wondering how that plays into your success and how it also can be a challenge, if it is at all, because you can just tell by talking to you how fun-loving and happy you are.
Yeah, I think that definitely plays into a lot of our success, and it's really what we spend a lot of time talking about at WhyHotel is people first. And so that's not only the guests that stay with us, that's our partners also, and then that's also how we treat our employees, and so.
No, I was going to say, and you mentioned having to kind of navigate between your mom and your dad growing up after they got divorced, and you're still this fun. It sounds like throughout you were a counselor and you're a successful business and you have a great personality. So, how did you handle it?
I think I think the biggest thing is being adaptable, right? And that you're going to have ups and downs and positives and negatives in your life, and it's all about it's all about rolling with the punches and not letting anything kind of hold you down, and keeping a positive spirit.
Bao, what's your website address?
Our website is whyhotel.com, WHY. Hotel.com.
We've been speaking with Vuong. Our guests today have been Molly Phonpadith, CEO and co-founder of SOAR Community Networks, Sam Rihani, COO and partner of Options for Senior America, Seth Moore, the CEO of T-Rex Solutions, and we just spoke to Vuong, co-founder and president of WhyHotel. I'm John Schuhart from Graybeard Coaching, and I want to thank my co-host Haley Morris from Cressa, Chris Yoko from the Yoko Company, Andrea Dykes from Howard Insurance, Joe Meadows from Bean, Kinney & Corman, and Alex Fleming from YHB CPA, and Jim Morgan from People Stretch Solutions. They did a great job in helping make for a good show tonight. Also, I'd like to thank our listening audience for listening. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a radio show. Don't forget to visit our website, executiveleadersradio.com, to learn more about our executive leaders. Have a great day. Bye-bye.